Taking Liberties is episode 5 of season 8 of Frasier. This is directed by the wonderful Kelsey Garber, and as always there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode chronologically and share some thoughts. It's a solid episode, we have some really great moments, we have a really great character, and it's definitely one that I rather enjoy. It starts off down at Cafe Nervosa. Frasier is looking for a housekeeper because now that Daphne is with Niles, he doesn't feel comfortable asking her to do loads of things around the house, which I thought was really thoughtful of Frasier. Roz briefly comes in trying to sell wrapping paper to raise money for a school fundraiser, and then Niles comes in with problems with Mel, and then Frasier finds out information about a butler, and we cut to said butler opening Frasier's curtains and waking him up with a fragrant mist, and this is Ferguson, played by Victor Garber, and I love him. I love the character. I think he is absolutely delightful. I love what he brings to the episode. I think he's wonderful. And Frasier is clearly loving this as well. And he goes to have breakfast with Daphne and Martin. There's a tablecloth on the table. Everything looks really great. And we then find out that Mr. Murchie has been elected president of the opera board, and Ferguson suggests that Frasier sends him a gift to paint Frasier in a good light so that maybe Frasier can advance there as well. We then have an interesting conversation between Daphne and Ferguson about Niles, and that really helps to move some of the narrative forward, and we'll come on to that in a little bit. We then have a lovely moment where Ferguson is standing beside Martin, pressing the TV remote to change the channels for him, which I just thought was fabulous. And then Frasier comes home happy with how things are going with Mr. Murchie, and then Niles comes over, and they are both clearly loving the butler. They're loving Ferguson. Frasier gives the most fabulous smile. It is such a delight to see. And then Niles and Daphne are preparing to go for a date at Niles's place, but then Mel phones. And he needs to get to her now, because she clicks her fingers, and as part of the deal, he has to do what she says, and I hate it. And we then have another conversation between Ferguson and Daphne, and Ferguson asks Daphne an interesting question. He asks her why she thinks Niles hasn't stood up for himself yet. And it gets a little heavy, as Daphne does start to think that maybe there are too many differences between her and Niles, and maybe it won't work. I feel like that's a bit of a stretch just because Niles hasn't stood up for himself yet. I think maybe she's emotional, she's stressed, she's frustrated. I can understand why she's maybe jumping to that conclusion, but I don't think there's any merit in what she's saying. I don't think there's any weight to her thoughts there, and I'd be really surprised if anybody would feel the same way that she was feeling in that moment, but I don't blame her for feeling the way that she did. Martin then goes to a game while Frasier prepares for his party. Roz then arrives with wrapping paper, and then the guests arrive, and we have Nicholas Hormann playing Alan Murchie, we have Noel Conlon as Henry Worth, and we have BJ Ward as Diane Murchie, Alan Murchie's wife. And then Ted and Lois arrive, played by Frances Guinan and Heather Ehlers, and they arrive with a friend, and that friend is Mel, just as Niles and Daphne are getting ready to go out. And Niles apologises to Daphne because yet again, because of Mel, their plans have been ruined. And she tells him, not necessarily angrily or nastily, but I think quite bluntly, that he shouldn't make any more promises that he can't keep. And I think that's fair, because every time he makes a promise, Mel makes him break it. And obviously this goes back to the earlier conversation about when Fergus said that Niles isn't standing up for himself, and I think we're really starting to be made as viewers to focus on that yes, to begin with, they had an arrangement, they had an agreement, but Mel is really taking liberties, as the title of the episode suggests, and Niles is just accepting all of it, and it's not a great look, and she's clearly just willing to push this, and Niles realises that. Finally, Niles realises it, and he confronts her in the room in front of everybody, and he basically shouts of her, this sham of a marriage is over. And I loved it. It was such a beautiful, wonderful moment. And what I particularly loved is that obviously everybody left really uncomfortable, and Niles said to Frasier, I'm sorry for spoiling your party. Frasier doesn't care. He doesn't even mind that the evening was ruined, because he gets to see Niles and Daphne together. And that is such a lovely thing for Frasier to see, and it's such a lovely moment for us as viewers to witness. And then Frasier is losing his butler because Ferguson resigns, because he was inspired by Niles and Daphne to maybe go after a romance of his own. And well, without Ferguson there, Frasier then wakes up not with Ferguson spraying a mist over him, but with Eddie jumping on him, which I have to say, I think that's a great way to start the day. Being woken up by love and kisses from a Jack Russell, I'd absolutely love it. But clearly, that's not for Frasier, and I just thought that was a really fun way to end things. Solid episode. It's great that we finally have some progress with Niles and Daphne, and Ferguson is just an absolute joy. Really thoroughly enjoyed it. Nothing about this that didn't work. It was a really fun episode with some really fabulous moments. Taking Liberties is, all things considered, a pretty fabulous episode of Frasier.